Good morning, everyone. This is Chris with CoreCommerce. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm going to give everyone a couple of moments to get in. I know it's just now hitting 10 o'clock. If anyone has any issues hearing me in any way, feel free to mention that in the chat as I'm looking at that now, and I'll be able to see any comments you guys mentioned. But nice to see everybody joining in and looking forward to getting started on this. Pretty good webinar here. It'll be pretty brief, but it's just kind of a quick overview of what this situation is and what we have coming out that'll help you deal with it. And then of course we can do some Q&A as well. So I'll give everyone another moment here to get started, and we'll go in on it. So everyone should be able to see my presentation here, and if you can't for any reason, let me know. And I know some of you have joined by phone, so I'll do a good job of explaining since you're not able to view what I'm doing here. There will be a recording of this webinar as well that we'll do, and we'll send out to people once this is complete. So I'll go ahead and get started now. Let me just pull back up my presentation. So today's webinar is going to revolve around sales tax and what economic nexus actually is and how we can cope with it going forward. And so economic nexus is a relative, I mean, it's been around for a few years now, but it's only really starting to ramp up with respect to people having to get used to how it works. And so what it is, the best way to found this good definition on Google is the best way I can think of to explain it. It's just an entire web of where each state has their own specific rules on how digital goods or just e-commerce in general should be taxed, whether it's in or out of state. And in the past, what we were all used to was, for example, if you're in the state of Tennessee, you only had to charge sales tax to people who also lived in the state of Tennessee, right? Depending on what you sold. But with economic nexus, that of course is potentially different now. For larger businesses, it probably affects them across the board for all 50 states. For smaller businesses, it may only affect you in one state. It may only affect you in one or two or three or four states, depending on how many sales you do at certain entities. So it's very, very complicated to understand as far as what the rules are for each state. Each state's totally different. Some states will, trigger your sales tax collection based on the amount of revenue you've done in that state over the calendar year. Another state might do the number of transactions and the amount of volume you've done over the trailing 12 months. So, I mean, there's no standardized set of rules that each state uses. And so it becomes very complicated. If you're going to try to figure out how to do this thing manually, it becomes, virtually a nightmare trying to understand what states I have to collect tax in, keeping track of it, figuring out when I'm now required to collect tax in a state and when I'm not. And of course, it is a giant pain in the butt, as you could all probably already relate to and understand. So there's a lot to it, and thankfully we have some upcoming relationships and features in CoreCommerce that are going to help solve this issue. Now, for those of you who have used our sales tax tool that's built into CoreCommerce in the past, as you probably know, that tool was not really ever designed to handle all the Nexus rules. So, can it handle multiple states worth of sales tax? Sure, it can, but the part it doesn't do is it doesn't keep track of what all the Nexus rules are going to be, and okay, well, but now I have to collect tax in the state of Alabama, and it's never going to know that. It's going to be 100% dependent on you to manually know when you have to turn states on, and then at the start of the next year, the states are off again, certain ones are off, and then you'll enable them again. It's just never designed to handle all of that functionality and logic. So what we're planning on doing here, and like I said, the only true way to really going to monitor this is to use one of these tax service providers that's going to be able to keep track of all these rules and integrate into CoreCommerce in order to do so. So based on the screen here, as you can see, every state's going to have their own rules. Some states require you to have a physical presence in there, some don't. I mean, there's just all kind of crazy rules associated with it, right? So the only way to really deal is going to be to work with one of these providers. And we have two coming out. One's called Avalara, and the other one's called TaxJar. They essentially do the same thing. It's just two separate companies that we're partnering with to give multiple options on how to do this. And you may have heard of Avalara. Not everybody may have heard of TaxJar, but like I said, they essentially do the same thing. So what these companies provide, like for example, Avalara is, it can support calculating the tax rates, knowing what the existing sales tax rates are in each state, in each county, in each city, and as it gets down even further than that, some specific zip codes or some specific plus fours will not only have just a state rate and a county rate and a city rate, they may have a transit rate. They may have other special rates that apply just to them, right? So, so not only is it understanding the rules of Nexus itself complicated, but then the actual tax rates themselves, change all the monthly, even I believe is what I've seen. And it's not just a state rate and a county rate and a city rate. There are other small little special rates that could affect sales tax, in like a 3-block radius potentially, a certain +4 of a zip code. So, like I said, keeping track of all of that manually is just not feasible for any of you, anybody listening on this call, any of our clients, any e-commerce person in general, is that has to collect sales tax in any way, shape, or form. There's just no simple way to do this. So that's what Avalara can help do. They'll keep track of all the rates, make sure all the rates are constantly updated every day, every month, every week, however often they change. They'll always be the current rates in real time. And what they do is they have Nexus capability. So what that means is when you have an account with Avalara and CoreCommerce, what will happen is CoreCommerce will be able to send all these orders into your Avalara account. And what Avalara does is it will keep track of, all right, how many transactions and how much volume have you done in each of the 50 states. So based on us sending all the orders, they'll keep track of that all themselves. Their tool will be able to automatically then flip the switch, so to speak, on any state to tell it, so it knows when you've crossed a threshold, for example, in sales in the state of Tennessee or the state of Alabama, it'll know that and can instantly start making sure that sales tax rates are calculated for those states going forward in CoreCommerce. So think of it like this. So when a customer is on your store and they're checking out, the system goes to calculate tax. It's going to connect to Avalara. It's going to say, hey, this person's zip code is this, their state and their county is this, blah, blah, blah. Avalara is going to come back and say, all right, the tax rate is this percentage. It's going to know, first and foremost, it's going to know what the correct percentage needs to be in real time. But second most, it's going to know, are you currently at this moment in time eligible to have to collect sales tax in the state? If you're not, I'm just going to tell you the tax rate is 0. But if you are, I'm going to go give you the appropriate tax rate for that state, county, zip, city combination, if that makes sense. So that's how it helps you do this. And so CoreCommerce will basically just charge whatever tax rate Avalara says it needs to charge for that address and that amount. But Avalara is the one that's keeping track of what states you need to calculate in, which states you're eligible for sales tax in, which ones you're not, and so far and so forth. TaxJar, if I go to my next screen here, you might see it. I'm not sure what, oh, there it went. There it goes. TaxJar, same thing. It's just another partner we do. It's another product that does essentially all the same thing. And in addition to tracking all your orders and keeping track of when you need to activate and deactivate states, for example, they even have other services you can pay additional fees for. Let's say you do enough sales that you're having to collect sales tax in 20 different states. I know some customers of mine that do that now, and they do it a whole different way. And we're going to get them to switch over to these platforms when these are ready. However, he's got to go manually file state tax returns in each one of those 20 states, right? So that's another service that TaxJar and Avalar both provide to you. There is a separate fee, of course, but that they can actually do all the filing of all the state returns, so that you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours doing all that for all the different states you did. So I guess the good news about Nexus is if you're a smaller business to a medium-sized business, some of these thresholds are, $200,000 here, $500,000 there. So some of these thresholds, you may never have the sales in that state. I mean, we'd all love to have that much sales all the time, but you may never have the amount of sales in that state for it to ever kick on, and it may never be something you have to worry about in certain states. But as your business grows, the likelihood of you starting to hit those thresholds probably increases, and then it's something you just want to make sure that you're constantly aware of, and using these services will always guarantee that CoreCommerce is going to be charging the customer the exact tax rate that it needs based on your current situation at hand, as opposed to you just telling CoreCommerce what to do and hoping it's right after the fact, which is, that's the problem we're all wanting to get around here. So the good news is these two applications are going to be ready here within the next 30 to 45 days. TaxJar is the one we're building right now, and we're also in the middle of the Avalar integration. I believe the TaxJar one will probably be done first, and then when these are done, you'll be able to sign up for accounts with these services, and then add these integrations into your CoreCommerce store, and then set everything up. And once it's all configured, you're off and running. Everything's good to go. Now, as far as the pricing of these, there's not a way for me to know or tell you what there is no real base price point for what these services cost. They base their pricing off the amount of transactions you run, the amount of volume you run through your store. So what you pay to this company, TaxJar or Avalar, is going to be 100% dependent on how much it's used by your business, how much revenue, how many orders you're sending to them, what the total volume is of all those orders, and that kind of thing. Now, they can provide quotes to anybody. If you give them all the information they need about, projected sales, projected revenue, things like that, they can give you ballpark estimates of what they think it would cost you monthly to use their service. But until you actually probably use it, the best you can probably do is kind of get an idea of what, like in the ballpark of what it could cost. And then of course it'll probably vary a little bit monthly based on, how many transactions you're pumping through in a month, and how much volume those transactions take into account. So the conclusion is, here is, obviously Nexus is very complicated. It's not something you want to try to deal with yourself, whether it's just the tax rates themselves, and on top of that, just understanding what the thresholds are, when you got to turn things on and off. It's so complicated. It's never worth anybody's time to try to figure it out. The good news is, it's not a situation where you instantly have to start collecting sales tax in all 50 states. So, some of us may only have to worry about one or two states, in running our business for a year. Other clients may have to worry about 10 or 20 states. So it's definitely all over the place, and these tools that we're building are going to make it a lot simpler and easier to deal with sales tax when they're out. So that's kind of the end of where I wanted to go with this. If you guys have any questions, there should be a Q&A section that we can go into, or you can feel free to just put it into the chat. And I'm happy to look at it as well. If you guys have any questions at all, most of you have my email too. I'll put it into the chat as well. And most of you know who I am, so it's easy for you to shoot me an email if you have any questions about how this works or anything that I said here. And this will be available as a recording as well. So if you have any further questions that come up about how this works, and or if you want me to try to get you a more specific ETA on when these will be available, I can certainly work on that. If you'd like me to put you in touch with people I know at Avalar or TaxJar because you're interested in getting a quote to work with either one of those providers, I'm happy to do that as well. So at this time, I'll stop talking for a minute, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll stop for a second. Hey, Mike, I saw your message, and yeah, I can't wait either. It's going to be a big deal for us to be able to do this and make, you know, that I just like your comment there. Mike even took the time to put 3 exclamation points, and I can't wait. Same here. I'm very excited to have these in here. It's going to make everybody's life easier sales tax wise, that's for sure. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? Okay, I didn't see any other comments or questions, so I hope this was educational for everyone. I know it was a shorter webinar this time compared to the first one, but my goal here is not to keep you guys on a call for 2 hours. I just want to keep it short and sweet, but hopefully give you some good informative info and then let you ask questions. And so again, these webinars are every Tuesday at 10. So on Thursday, we'll announce what the next webinar topic is going to be. If you ever have any suggestions about what you would want the next webinar to be about, feel free to send me an email. I put my email in the chat. Feel free to contact me that way with any questions about anything. But if there's any topics you'd like us to discuss in these webinars, I'm happy to do it. Just let me know and we'll go from there. If everybody's good, I appreciate everybody's time today. And have a great day, everyone.